Welcome to the third event in the Chicago Poetry Center's 50th Anniversary Learning Series. I'm Helena Chanzar, Director of Programs at the Chicago Poetry Center. At CPC, our mission is to connect people and poetry, equitably engage poets with communities, and advance creative literacy in the city and beyond. We do this through poetry programming in Chicago area schools and public events like a monthly live-streamed reading series. This year is CPC's 50th anniversary, and to celebrate, we've offered 3 virtual presentations that gather Chicago poets to talk about the next steps in poetry. Tonight, we'll hear from C. Russell Price on how to organize a poetry manuscript. Before we begin, I'd like to share a few notes about the format of this session. Please feel welcome to make yourselves comfortable. You can stay on screen or turn your screen off, but I do ask that you remain muted for the duration of Russell's presentation. Russell might ask a question during the presentation, and you're encouraged to participate in the chat. We'll save all questions for the Q&A at the end of the session. If you have a question for Russell, please type the word stack into the chat. Please do not enter your questions in the chat. I'll keep track of all the participants in the stack, and I will call on folks in order at the end of the meeting to unmute and ask your questions during the Q&A. If your question is answered during the presentation or you change your mind and no longer want to speak, please type cancel in the chat. Now I'll add this info to the chat just so you have it handy and can remember how we will run our Q&A. Also, we have a really fun year of events, both local and virtual, at the Chicago Poetry Center. So if you'd like to stay updated on what we're doing next and how you might be able to be involved, I'll also enter the link to the Chicago Poetry Center's mailing list. We'd love to keep in touch. All right. Without further ado, I'm happy to introduce tonight's presenter, C. Russell Price. C. Russell Price is originally from Glade Spring, Virginia, but now lives in Chicago. They are a Lambda Fellow in Poetry, a Ragdale Fellow, a Windy City Times 30 Under 30 honoree, an essayist, and a poet. They are a 2-time top 50 writer of Chicago honoree. They are the author of a chapbook, Tonight We Fuck the Trailer Park Out of Each Other, from Sibling Rivalry Press, and the full-length collection, Oh, You Thought This Was a Date? Apocalypse Poems, from Northwestern University Press. Their current projects are Bisquick, Seance Poems, and I Don't Need a Mood Ring, I've Got a Face, a memoir. They're on the editorial and curatorial boards for the Ragdale Foundation, Story Studio Chicago, and the Anarchist Review of Books. They are a poet in residence with the Chicago Poetry Center and Landscape in the Windy City. All right. Once again, welcome everyone, and welcome Russell.
Hi, how are you? Can you hear me okay? Okay, great, wonderful. Okay, sweet. Hooray, nice to see everyone from all over the country. That's so fun. So just an idea of how tonight is gonna work. We're gonna talk, or I'm gonna talk for a little bit, and then we're gonna take like a few minute break, like a 5 to 7, and then we're gonna finish up the last bit of the presentation, and then we'll do like 15 to 20 minutes Q&A max. So I am tasked with describing the Herculean effort of sequencing a poetry collection. So I hope you are coming to this with a full body of work. If you are starting out on a collection, this is also fun because you can think of where you need to go. Next slide, please. So you have a bunch of poems. I want you to think of if your project should fall into a chapbook category, which is 20 to 40 pages, or if it should fall into a full manuscript, which is 40 to 80 pages. There are a lot of perks of doing a chapbook. I did a chapbook trailer park, which allowed me to kind of explore what kind of poems I wanted to have out in the world. And then I could use those poems as part of my full manuscript. So that's like a fun little overlap of just because it's published in a chapbook doesn't mean you can't not use it in your full manuscript. Next slide, please. What is the framework of your project? So some things to consider when you have a large body of work is this a project book or is this a collection? If it's a project, what other texts have approached the same idea and how is yours different? For example, like I love project books. I think they're my favorite things. Say you want to write about bees like Nick Flynn, so you do a beehive book. And then that is your project framework. So some favorites are Red by Chase Bergeron, which uses uh, Dracula as the framework versus Newspaper Blackout, which is using the New York Times every day for a certain amount of time and erasing it and creating their own blackouts. So like if you are going to do a creative project that's a collage or a blackout or whatever, what are the other projects that already exist under your parameters? If it's a collection, what separates your poems from what you've produced before or after? Like how would you frame it and not necessarily like these are my poems about Virginia. Okay, fine. But like, what is a larger way of constructing it? So two of my favorites are Written After a Massacre in the Year 2018 by Daniel Brzezinski and Winter of Worship. Daniel looks at state violence within the year of 2018 along transnational lines. And Caleb looks at COVID response and healthcare within the working class within the early days of the pandemic. So they're using a time frame parameter to then explore other options that exist within the world of the book. Next frame, please. Before you even start sequencing, you've got to ask yourself what are the overriding themes of your book, of your collection. This you can really kind of break it down in a marketability sense of would my book fall under women's stories, queer narrative, family, nature, faith, gender, yada, yada, yada. If you're like, where do I fall under? When I have a whole body of work, I will put it into a word cloud generator and then be able to see what singular words or singular phrases are hyper repetitive. And I can all of a sudden be like, wow, I never thought I wrote about dogs as much as I do. But here we are. I've used dogs in X amount of poems. I'm able to like figure out the centering because like sequencing is about centering and building yourself out. Yeah, if I were to approach my work having never read it before, what would I want the reader to first notice? Do I want it to be my voice, my image, my diction, my rhetoric, my style, my use of line? If you are a cinematic girly and you want to lead with image, then that's what you want to make sure as you're starting. Next slide, please. Okay, I have a bunch of poems and I need to kind of be close reading each one to figure out where they fall in the sequence. I like to code all of my poems and I like to be experimental about how I approach them. Um, do not be precious at any point during forming a sequence of poetry because an editor will mark your stuff up or be like, hey, that's a really terrible poem to end on. How about we end on this one? And all of a sudden you feel like your world is thrown. So I like to do a really close reading of every poem before I start to put it into conversation with its siblings. So I use a bunch of markers and highlighters, and I mark any color that's used because, like, think about even if I say apple, I'm all of a sudden either thinking green or red. So I need to think of where the color patterns are in my work. Any sensory movement used, like if I have two poems that are invoking smelling, what is that doing? Like where is my excitement? Where is my experimentation? Characters, you and I, whatever. The focal point of the poem is the heart of that individual poem, this gutbuster of dialogue? Is it the tulips in the field? Is it this harsh break? What do I want the reader to take away from this individual poem, regardless of everything else? And then at the top of each poem, I write what I think the vibe is. Like, is this a essay poem? Is this a heartbreak poem? Is this a whatever? The point of view, you don't want, you can do whatever the fuck you want, to be honest. But how boring is it to have I poems, as opposed to like where does the you, the collective come into play, and then the opening and closing image, because I need to tack it on, which we'll see later. Next slide, please. Okay, you've got all your poems coded and they're all over your living room floor, and your roommates are wicked mad. By now, you should notice the ticks in your own writing and be able to trace the major motifs and images throughout it. How many times you write about a dog? What is the energy of one image used in one poem versus another? This should make you feel overwhelmed. Another important feeling that I have about sequencing is that I don't think you should do it like, oh, I have 30 minutes before work every day this week, I can work on sequencing. That's not enough to embody yourself and really be so in your own work that you can step away. Like this is a weekend project. This is when you got the time, you've got to really just nail it in. So you should feel overwhelmed at this. And then I want you to be noticing when poems are doing the work that other poems are. And that's when you're going to start culling the herd. Next slide, please. Get weird, please. You've got to start experimenting with the idea of using other creative mediums to outline your collection. That if your book is narrative driven, say you're going to write about the children's winter in Nebraska, and you know it starts on this day and ends on this day, how are the poems then emotionally driven, and how are you figuring out where they fit into a line that isn't A, B, C, D? There needs to be spiking. And I love to do a dream board, a visual collage, anything that might help me use a different sense in expressing where I think the movement of the poem or the collection should be. I did this, the cheat code. I did this a lot for my first book, where I tried to be like, oh, if I was dancing, if I was in my body, where would anger reside? Where would whatever? And then not relying so much on linguistic communication, but instead, what is the other way to like push this narrative? How am I going to convey what I want to convey in such a odd way? Next slide, please. Okay, we're gonna start now that your roommates are looking at you weird and your stuff is everywhere and you've been lyrically dancing for 2 hours to Creedence Clearwater Revival. You've got to pick your first and your last poem. What image do you want the reader to start and end with? So I love to look at my favorite books, and I do this for every book I pick up. I read the first line and the last line, which kind of feels a little bit trashy because I know what they're like heading towards, and I want to like project what like how we got there. Um, but it gives me a bookend of how I need my book to progress. Um, and then you also need to think, especially in your first poem, how is it approaching the reader? Is it asking the reader to be an observer, to be a voyeur? Is it an invitation to interact with the speaker or the work in the sense of language or narrative or image? How are you going to hook them in your first poem? Next slide, please. Okay, you figured out your diva opener, and you want to next figure out where to move. So ask yourself if your opener poem is a preamble poem. Like, does it summarize the argument of your collection as an intro, or does it work as like an amuse-bouche to what is going on for the rest of your poems? Does your work lend itself to a boxcar of poems and that every poem is da 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 da? Or can they be sectioned off and kind of broken down into their own worlds? Next slide, please. Okay, if you've been reading a lot of contemporary American poetry, there is a ton of sections or like using graphic or text or like hypertext, like sectional headers or all of this breaking. Why do people like doing this? It gives the reader a time to collect themselves before entering the next section, especially if you're doing something deeply emotionally driven. It allows a little respite and asks the reader to consider the weight of a singular poem in its conversation with those around it. It allows the author to be creative in their pacing, world building, tension, and control. Like, I'm not going to lead a like breakup poem if I'm not going to do a section break, because all of a sudden that blackout, the end, whatever, just gives it so much more excitement. Um, cheat code stanza meaning. Okay, I love that stanza means, or loosely means, room in Italian, where when we think about our poems and stanza format, that each section is its own room to itself within the house. So if we're thinking of that on a large scale of a collection, that how are you going to break them down? How is this spot? And I know that seems very abstract and strange, but it'll help you compartmentalize where poems go. And many rant on consumption of literature via COVID. Uh, I think also we have to think of what the books we're producing now post COVID. Like, how much time do you expect your reader to spend with it? Do they sit with it? Is it a commute book? Is it whatever? That can go into a whole thing on marketing and selling a book. But when you're creating it, when you're sequencing it, you've really got to be thinking of, where do I envision someone who is reading this? Are they reading it in an hour in a bathtub? Are they reading a devotional poem every day on the train? What is your intention? And then that will affect your sequencing. Next slide, please. Okay, I love the sections, but I like the traditional American collection standard of pum 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 pum. Break it apart. Even if you want to do a traditional one style, like, step away from it. Step away, break your poems apart, let some breath happen into them, and then come back to it and look at it with fresh eyes and ask if the sections actually help your collection. Because are you overwhelming the reader? Are you overwhelming the editor? Or does a moment really heighten the individual poems? Next slide, please. Okay, I've convinced you to do sections. And like, what does that even mean when you have poems everywhere? So you have your opening poem, and you've got to build on that. When I lay out an entire collection, I think of what season is it in the story of the poem? Like, and I know that sounds like woo-woo weird, but think of, is this a spring poem and where does the book end? Is this in the course of the year? Um, and then the metaphor I really love for this is, if you have a poem that uses an apple, do you want them all together like an orchard, or do you want them dotted throughout like sections as a through line? Um, that just, it summarizes it perfectly. That a section can have one poem, but it has to be wicked strong. And if it has the inklings of everything else, it'll fit in. Next slide, please. Okay, I've decided on 5 sections, each one with its own thing. How you define your section is between you, your editor, and God. Like, how you figure out your mess of poems is totally on you. That does not need to be conveyed directly or indirectly to the reader. That is your own building block of your collection. So like, say, like in my first book, I put all of the we poems, all of the you poems, all of the whatever, all of the Virginia. Then it had this feeling of unintentional cohesion. And that's what you're really trying to get with forming a collection, is it needs to feel effortless, it needs to feel smart, it needs to feel intentional. Speaking of, you've got to be ready to just move things all willy-nilly. If you think, oh, this is my opening section, be ready to move that to the end, and vice versa. Because once things go through editorial, you have no control over it. Next slide, please. Okay, this is my absolute favorite part. Okay, so if you've got all of your poems divided into sections. Say you've got the landscape, the body, the lover, who cares, whatever. Now you've got to figure out where to like trace them between one to the other. And you've got to think, okay, what do I have in this section that I need to echo into the other section? Like chiasmus shit, where it's like, oh, X, Y, Y, X, where I need to like make the crosshair to make the sections feel interwoven. Um, Next slide, please. So you've got to figure out how to get there. So you've got to ask yourself, even if you feel like you are done with all of your writing, you're like, I have 145 poems, I'm exhausted, I don't want to write anything more. Tough, 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 tough. Because you've got to figure out those connective tissues. So you've got to figure out if you need a poem of a different diction, a different visualization, text play. Does it counter or volley the poem that it's leading up to? How many poems do you have that are in a certain point of view? How do you use a poem in between 2 sections to play? Because when we're going into a collection, we want to read excitement, we want to read surprise, we want to read fun. We don't need to linger in a stagnant state. Next slide, please. Oh my God, no, now you have more poems to write and you thought you were done. So this is when I start researching more exciting things that like tie into my book that I already feel like I'm done with. I've decided to make a duplicate of that manuscript, the one that I think I am all good with. I have my new like tie-in poems that I'm gonna like figure out where they go, and then I'm gonna cut again. And that is gonna be the worst part where you're like, oh my goodness, I have this poem I wrote 10 years ago. This is the crown of my collection. Well, what if that poem you wrote in the last month does all of the labor of that poem and better? What if you've been more attuned to your own language obsessions, that you've written something better? Next slide, please. And you've got to be fine with cutting. Like, that is the worst part of sequencing, is you've done all this behind the scenes stuff, and now you're gonna have to like cut, just like rip it apart, because your weaker poems will stand out at that point. When I was going through one collection with an editor, they pulled one of my favorite poems. They were like, "Why do you like this?" I was like, "Oh, it's like da da da." And like, well, yeah, but it's easy. It's easy compared to the arguments that your other poems are making. So you've got to think of where can I cut that. Um, and then I love this idea of, so say you're writing about apples, whatever. You have a bunch of apple rotting poems, but then you all of a sudden are doing that research, figuring out I need to make a poem leading from section 5 to section 6, and I start researching the effects of pesticides on the Appalachian Mennonite apple butter community. And now I have this poem that is outside of the world of the book, but still playing with its fringes. Um, and then this is when you're going to really think about what is your book really about. Um, and this is when you kind of lose your mind. Next slide, please. And this is where I lost my shit during my most recent book, in which I thought, oh, I'm going to write a poem, I'm going to write a book about grief and like all the heavy stuff that comes with it. And then that leads me to going to a psychic. And then that leads me to researching psychics. And that leads me into XYZ. And all of a sudden, I'm writing a book about a ghost horse and all these like tangential things that tie into it. And it's led me to being more emotionally aware in my work, where it's like, oh, I can write a poem about dead best friend. That's whatever. But if I'm writing a poem using the cowboy as the vehicle for that, it becomes more exciting and more marketable. Um, excuse me. And if you're on the hunt for material for a poem, this is where you're going to find it, where you're just going to think outside of your own obsession in your creation and get to something fun. Next slide, please. Oh, wait. At this point, your collection has totally changed and it's scary and you're really mad at everything, and I am here for you. So, you've done a bunch of generative work and you've looked at your poems so closely, you're sick of yourself. And that is totally chill. But, like, also be proud of that you gave yourself an idea of writing a through poem and then it's led you on to other adventures. And if you're stubborn and you're thinking, oh, I know my book needs to be um, childhood, middle age, senior, it needs to be these poems, it needs to follow X, Y, Z, that's totally great. But if I can follow it quickly, or if anyone can follow, there's no surprise and there's no enjoyment. And there's no excitement from an editor, let alone a reader. Um, Next slide, please. I know that seems really harsh, but like we've got to be really like acknowledging of, we all think our stuff is shit. We all think it's like wonderful and like amazing. But we also have to think of, if someone's coming to this new, what are they like? Why are they coming into it? What is your book giving to the reader? You think you're done, but psych. Okay, you've got to revisit the questions you asked yourself before you even started sequencing. The heady ones of like, who is the book for? What does it serve? What other works is it in conversation, agreement, or argument with? When I'm writing my ghost cowboy horse book, I need to also look at um, cowboy tales of the West that weren't published after the 50s. I need to look at horse girl fanaticism. I need to look at all the things on the exterior of the world that I'm building. And I need to really ask myself, how am I setting my work apart from everyone else? If you have your like 5 things, oh, I'm doing faith, I'm doing family, I'm doing whatever, what are they doing and what are you doing? Next slide, please. Does the newest iteration of your manuscript answer those questions, and are you happy with it? If you're happy and your hair is all pulled out and you're asking for God's intervention on this perilous quest of being a poet, I want you to look at their contemporaries and look at the flow of them. I love going to Women and Children First or myopic books or anywhere that has a really steady and solid poetry collection and flipping through everyone, looking at who I enjoy, what are they doing, because it will help you see that, oh, great, everyone's doing blackout lines now. Like you'll be able to notice the trends and it'll keep you from kind of getting stale before you've even entered the submission period. Next slide, please. Okay, you've flipped through collections and you're like, wow, everyone else is really great. And you've done the terrible sin of creative comparison. um good good job, like hooray, like you need to be aware of what your creative contemporaries are doing, and you need to create a beast that should resemble nothing like you've started. This is also a really fun part. You need to send it to at least 5 creative friends for an early read, but you need to ask permission to send it before you do, that it doesn't need to be like, hey, here's this fucking crazy book in your inbox. No, hey, do you have a minute? I would love it if you could like read my book. I would love to treat you to coffee or a beer or whatever. And then you need to be specific on that you are wanting to then submit the manuscript in the next XYZ. But you're not just sending this out to people to blow smoke about you. Like you want them to know that their critique, their input, their time, everything is going to further the project and not just tell you you did a good job. And that's going to be really tough if, say, like your best readers are your grad school friends. Like, great, but like reach out to younger and experienced poets, older, whoever style that is really in niche with like what you're writing. Um, Next slide, please. Oh, also, on the last one, uh, if you are friends with fiction writers, like I feel bad for you, but like think of the person you're sending it to, why you want them to read it. If you're sending it to a fiction person, you want them to follow narrative, you want them to do whatever. I love nonfiction writers because they're more attuned to lyrical prowess that poets are as well. Um, so be thinking of that. Okay, take a break. You've sent it to your 5 friends and you've asked them for their honest feedback. You want to know what they think, whatever. Um, Take a minute, like really step away from it and know that there is things outside of your control that are working on the manuscript, and you can really just walk away. Next slide, please. During that time, you've got to keep yourself busy by doing something that isn't just focusing on the manuscript. So I set strange parameters for myself when I'm working on a collection, that I don't read fiction, especially fiction set during my time period that I'm working on or whatever subject I'm working on. That I like keep that separate. I don't want any influence that I'm not intentionally asking for. So during my time away from my manuscript, I watch every Western, I listen to all my favorite country songs, I do whatever it is that I can immerse myself and not feel guilty. I don't do research on the project that is in production. I've really got to step away from it and really separate subconsciously, because at this point you should be so in your book that you don't think about anything else. Next slide, please. But if you are obsessed and you can't step away from your project, daydream, daydream, daydream. and think about book cover ideas, podcasts, or social media places that might also be interested in your project. Um, don't be in the writing, but be on the outskirts of it. Um, because then you can dream about epigraphs and blurbus and awards and whatever, and it's still fulfilling, but also not hyper fixated. Um, and if you've reached this point and you have a bunch of poems that you've made into a collection, you deserve to daydream about it because that is such a big step. And I don't think we put enough effort into how much work it just gets to get there. Say you wrote 500 heartbreak poems and you whittled it down to 25 to do some bogus chapbook. That is still so beautiful. Next slide, please. Okay, your friends have sent you the reviews and they're good and you don't absolutely suck. So you need to thank your readers, send them a gift card or take them out for something. You need to thank them sincerely for their feedback, even if you don't agree with it, because you need to be curious about what their argument is or what their problem is. I remember one friend, like I had them read the manuscript and they're like, you talk about the moon too much. So then that led me to writing a poem about the moon, the cowboy, and the speaker having this weird love triangle. Because if my obsession right there is obvious to an outside person, then that's giving me some fuel to write a poem that acknowledges that, like, that looks at my own flaws in the collection. Um, and then I'm going to go back into the heart of the book and see what I can change with their feedback. Next slide, please. Okay, Diva, you've got a book on your hands, and you can either send it to a press via acquisitions or enter it to a competition. And this is a session unto itself, um, about what it means to now have a book and then send it to the world. My advice is to look at back titles of anywhere you're interested in, and then ask the author what their experience with the press is. If you're like, oh, I want to enter da 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 this big award, great. Look at, has an author of that big award published any book within the last 5 or 10 years? Reach out to the author to be like, did you have a nice experience? What was the contract stipulations? Have you earned out your winnings? Say you win a book prize for 20 grand or some bullshit. If you don't sell your book out, then you're still in debt to the press. And then what does that mean for your future endeavors? Do you want to go even the contest route and spend X amount for the year? Those are really like personal and tough and hard questions. Um, Also be thinking, do I want to be with this press because it is a reputable press and they have a good Instagram vibe? Like they are great at marketing. Wonderful. Well, how do they treat their authors? Do they allow them to pick their own artwork for their cover? Or is this selected by a board completely separate from the author? And the same goes with if you decide to do indie press or smaller publishing or even self-publishing. What are they doing outside of we printed your shit? Like, are they actually publicizing you? Are they entering you into things? How are they supporting your writing with their limitations? Next slide, please. Okay, as proud as you might be about your book and you've sent it in and whatever, the editor has the final say, and your entire collection could change from submission to production. This happened with my last book, that what I thought was my opener was my closer. What I like thought was whatever, nope. And then they had the overriding vote, which was great. But do not think that what you start, what you send, what you sign is going to be what actually gets on the bookshelves. Next slide, please. So we're going to take our time with this one. So here are some books with creative, smart, fun, sexy, cool book sequencing. Short film starring my beloveds, Red Bronco, American Sex Tape, Dear God, Dear Bones. This list is based on how the poet decides to use form in their collection versus subject. What weight do I get by the movement of the manuscript? So there's a little list, and then we can go to the next slide, please. And then here's another follow-up. Some others that were not listed: Natalie Diaz, Diane Seuss, um, folks that sequentially in their work, I feel like I am transported to different worlds and I am experiencing language in different focus. And I feel that with these, that anything by Charles Wright. Um, yeah. And then we're going to do Q&A.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Russell. Now we are going to transition into the Q&A. I welcome anyone who would like to ask a question to type stack into the chat, and then I will add you to the list. Sorry, my cat is like on my lap and I'm just trying to move some things around. All right. So, all right, the first person in the stack is Michael. Michael, I welcome you to unmute and ask your question.
Okay, had me go in there for a second. Gonna do two, but one of them's just a real quick. Well, actually, I won't. You talking about trying to ask authors about their experience. How do you get them to actually dish dirt on their publishing houses? Because these people still have relationships with these houses, and they may not be all that crazy about speaking to someone who they don't even really know that well about that.
Well, I think can you hear me okay?
Oh yeah.
Okay, great. I think if you approach it with, I'm interested in working with the press that you have worked with, that it's not, I'm looking for shit talk, I'm looking for trash talk, like whatever. Instead, I want to be part of the community that you are being supported by. Did you like it? Because then it doesn't feel like you're fishing for gossip. Instead, someone will be very quick to say, hey, I love this press, but they won't pay for conferences, or I had issues with artwork, or whatever. Because you're going to do events with that person later on if you get accepted into that press. Like, this is always in the, like, you want to lead with professionalism, even
Mhm.
if this is the baloney of being in an art form that doesn't pay anything. Um, and I think that, like, I hope that answers you a little bit.
Sort of. Again, though, I just wonder about the reticence some people are going to have about talking about the problems as opposed to the good parts. But
Well,
rather,
shouldn't they be like quick to go though with like, oh, I worked with Express, I loved yada yada. You would love to work with this editor. If they had a great experience, they should have no hesitation
well,
of
that part, yeah, is much easier than the these people just didn't do, that's sometimes a little harder to get. I'm going to really quick get you to do a yes or no. Um, Something that I sort of believe in, you talked about having friends and other people you know read your stuff as readers. A lot of people, as far as like instructors you might have at different places, other poets who sort of supplement their income by um, doing readings, and publishing houses themselves often have. Do you recommend spending the money that that might cost to have somebody who is a professional do that?
You should never pay someone to read your poetry book. Like that is for fiction, nonfiction, that is close reading. When it comes to hard editing, anyone who is saying it is, because I also have friends who say like, hey, I'll read 20 pages of your poems for $10. That feels fine because I'm supporting another fellow creative person. But we don't make $10 from a published poem. Like I think we need to like realize I focus more on community than like, am I paying you to get something from you? Like,
That's
why am I paying you $20 to read 5 of my poems? Like, what am I expecting you to do other than like hard edit, line break, whatever? I can get that from anybody that I respect and can barter, trade, whatever. But yeah, I think it's a very scammy to be like, I will read an entire manuscript for $100. Some bullshit. For poetry, girl,
that's
no.
okay. Yes, that's a great answer. Thank you.
Thank you for those great questions.
If anyone else has a question, oh, great. We have Rachel. Rachel is next in the stack, and I will unmute you.
Hi. Wait, my camera might not point. There we go. Hi. I was wondering if you have any had any specific like red flags to look for in publishers or presses. In the case of manuscripts, but honestly for anything.
Oh, Lordy. Okay. Google the publisher, because then that's going to pull up their Reddit, their Twitter, all these other things, because like any God, it sounds like just like a shit talk session, but any like problem they have, they might suppress on one social media, but there will be other people who will talk about it. That it's like the only time I've felt like, oh, this is a red flag is from when I've seen other poets that I like who worked with them and then said, hey, this did not work out. Or I signed with them 5 years ago. My book has still not come out. I've not been paid by this author or by this press, sorry. And they're hosting a fundraiser. That's the other thing to look out for. But it's like, what is the fundraiser helping in the sense of their published authors? Yeah, the red, it's harder to pinpoint. Because I feel like I'm so embedded in like binders for women on Facebook, or just all these groups that are actively trying to keep people aware of the problematic presses, that if it's not majoritively talked about, you won't know about. God, that does not make any sense, but I feel like, go ahead.
No, that makes total sense. And
Oh, yeah.
if there's, I don't know if there's anyone else in the stack. If I could ask like a follow-up question,
Yeah, of
do
course.
you have any good ideas for like groups? And I know you mentioned the one name of the one, but I think I missed the name.
So I think my favorites are regional based, because then you're going to find other poets in your community that are also, say, writing to the queer South or to the whatever. They're going to give you those leads. So that'll be your best bet. Or like, are you in Illinois? Oh, wait, yeah. Like, join any of those listservs through like Illinois Humanities, Poetry Center, Poetry Foundation. Any of those things will give you tip-offs to good things happening for you. Also, the other thing I like to do is, and this goes for submitting your poems as well, find a poet that you like and that you resonate with their voice, and then look at where they submit, who they follow, who they work with, and then that will give you an idea of who you want to associate yourself with. That's been my like best one, where it's like, oh, I write weird XY, like fucking weird shit over here. Well, that person does too, and their stuff got picked up by all these magazines. Let's send them to them.
Awesome, thank you.
See,
Thanks, Rachel. The next person in the stack is Caroline.
Okay. Hi. Thank you for everything. This is such a great night, and I'm really appreciating everything you're giving us. So my question is, I haven't been doing this like seriously for that long as far as trying to get, like a full-length collection out there. And I hate to sound like a total wuss, but my question is like, do you ever get like submission burnout? Like, do you ever get just like so discouraged about like sending it out and like what do you do? I mean, change things obviously, figure out I mean, some places I just cross off a list because they're like, oh, hey, they didn't bother to tell any of us who the winner was before they announced it, or they sent me like the other extreme is like, let me give you a 5-paragraph rejection letter, so that you don't get discouraged. But that's what I wonder about. Like, what do you have any tips for what to do when we just get frustrated with the process?
sure. So when I first started submitting, I would do like, oh, one Saturday every week, I would send 15 poems to da 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 da, and I would join like submission carpet bombers or whatever the fuck that was, where it would just like they would list like here are the 15 magazines we're all submitting to today. We're gonna flood their inbox, and it's like, why am I doing that? Like, am I wanting recognition? Am I wanting payment? Am I wanting publicity? Am I wanting publication? What is the intention of me submitting? And like, how can I get that elsewhere? One crazy thing that I really never considered is that say you do your full length and it gets picked up by a press and they're like, great, only X amount can be published. So say you have like half of it's not published, that's who they're going to send to other magazines. That's who they're going to shop around. And if you've published everything, now you're kind of pigeonholed. Um, I don't care as much about individual magazine publication now when I'm thinking of collection or book project as I did when I was just like, I'm writing a poem every day. I'm doing the poetry business, not I'm building a book. And I think that is like a real problem that poets face, is that they're like, oh, I wrote every day for 3 months. Here's my collection. Big whoop. Like that is not that is a thing, but that is not a book. That is not a piece of culture. That is not art. So yeah, I would say don't busy yourself. I also think of like my dream ones where it's like, oh, New Yorker, Paris Review, whatever. Great. I'll send it to them once a year and I'll walk away because it's not necessarily about landing it. It's about the effort and the intention of I want this and I want it with this magazine, not I want to get published in Joe Bob's Basement Review. And there's new things every day. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps a lot. Thank you so much.
So, and I think also, especially if you're dealing with a large body of work, that it's like, can my poems work as nonfiction? Can they work as whatever? And I can submit them to another magazine in this format as Flash, whatever. Um, what? Why am I wanting to share my work? That is what I'm always asking it.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Caroline. The next person in the stack is LK.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. I am writing I don't know what to call it, like I guess a collection of poetry, but I'm a visual artist first, and so poetry is very new to me. And the collection includes visual art and also, of course, poetry. And I can see how a lot of your advice would apply to like figuring out how to interject the written work with like more visual stuff, but I was curious as to whether you had specific advice related to like literal images and including that in your work.
So I think start like are you asking like pre-publication or like what timeline are you at the start of generating the manuscript?
I'm close to being done, but thinking about organizing it.
Okay, rad. So I would say, God, it's so tricky. So I do mood boards and images. Like when I feel like I'm finished with the book, I'll have already like compiled like, oh, screenshots of this album cover that feels like the book or this painting or whatever, and then have that collection to share with the next stage of production. Because just getting the rights for stuff is just so stupid and so hard. And like, say you get an advance for X amount, if you're using all of your advance to buy permission for one piece of art on one page, like you're kind of like just messing yourself over. One trick I did have a lot of terrible fun with. So I talked about the word cloud, but I'll also take a poem and put it into ChatGPT AI image software and then see like what the computer thinks is my focal image. And then hold on, let's see. Um, like, oh, you can't see from my screen, but my background is a blue horse from my next book that like Chat GBT like figured out this really cool image, and it has given me so much excitement on my manuscript. Um, that you have to be weary of anyone's copyright ownership. Like, and that can be shared with your editor, and they like love it, but you don't have much control over that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, kind of. I guess like I've made all of the artwork for it, and so
Oh, you've made it,
yeah, like
Diva.
I'm an artist first, so like that is, I guess, yeah, a huge part of the work. But yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. Because then you have full ownership over it, and then that makes it more exciting. And, like, even if you do like collage stuff or like whatever, if you have your own image rights, then you can look at like Tupelo, Northwestern, all kinds of places that do more like art books versus just like straight poetry. And you can open yourself up to like gallery presentations where it's like looking at poetry as exhibition with visual art, and you have so many opportunities, especially as the art maker. Also, magazines, you can make good money submitting artwork for consideration for cover image, and if they tie in that you write poetry too, they will push you all around. Like, that is wonderful. uh, does that help even more?
Yes, that is very helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh my God. The fact that you are so jealous.
Thanks. The next person in the stack is Megan.
Hi, I am a relatively new poet. I only started this year, but I did get selected for my university to be doing a research project this summer, and it's about 2 months long, and I'll be writing a research paper as well as a poetry manuscript. It may be full length, but it likely will be chapbook length. But I'm just worried because I'm going to be spending, like, it's a full-time job, basically. It's 40 hours a week. And I am terrified of being just so burnt out from my work that I have no inspiration anymore. And I'm just kind of wondering if you have any advice for like short-term projects and, trying to keep yourself from getting too overwhelmed by your own work. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yes, love a research project, especially like as an angel baby. Like when I was your age, I used to do party trick where I'd be like, okay, I have 10 minutes, give me a subject for a poem, and I'll write a poem about it. Where it's like I have 75 million other things on my brainwave, but if I just have to focus for 10 minutes on a flamingo, then I'm gonna write the best fucking flamingo poem you've ever heard. So I think that is like a real trick when it comes to writing, especially like a research project, where is if you have everything at your fingertips, what is my focus? Okay, great, I have that. Now I need to really pinpoint it. Um, so like I was writing about psychics, and I'm like, well, I could write about Nancy Grace. I could write about all kinds of wild stuff. No, I want to write about a psychic going to a graveyard. Great, there's my start. So I think setting your own parameters of time, more importantly than anything, and then subject will like help you kind of stay on track. Um, Also, if you're thinking of what's your subject? What's your research subject?
I'm researching urban naturalism and like the meaning of humanity in urban spaces.
Okay, great. I was gonna say, oh, if it's like from a time period, da 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 da, then I would break that down by region, or like urban, or like poverty rate within the urban. Like I think you can like break it down economically that to then like focus, oh, great, I need to write X poems for this. I need to do that, whatever. Um, that will keep you from going full haywire. Because to be frank, that is also a project that is more than just a summer, research trick. I once had a friend say to me when I was like working on like an early book where I was like, oh, it's a book about this, that. And they're like, you have more than one book in you. Stop trying to put everything in one fucking book. And I think that might also help you is like, oh, great. Is this a book about economic da 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 da? Or is this a book about love and being away from family? Think of where you've got to draw your lines. Does that help?
Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, thank you.
So, yeah, I mean, I really think the like, if you keep yourself to like every Thursday at 2 o'clock, I like sit in a cafe and write for 1 hour, that will keep you from feeling like you're losing your shit. Um, I have to do that, and I hate it. I feel like I am grown as hell. And why do I feel like if I don't do my Friday 2 o'clock with a friend, I've wasted my week? Um,
Great. Thank you. Does anyone else have a question? You're welcome to type stack in the chat and you can ask a question.
Paula, are you an Aussie?
I am. G'day, mate.
Oh, good day. Oh, read the phone book to us, please.
Sorry. Do you mind if I just ask you something? I mean, now, I'm sorry I'm late. That was very rude of me. So far to go. Um, I've got about 2,000 poems sitting in my um, um, hard disk. I sort of I'm going to start full-time writing because of health issues. Until then, I was a lawyer, parent, etc. And I've started to categorize them in different sections. And I just wanted to know three things. Number one, the difference between putting out a chapbook, submitting for rejection to poetry journals, and just publishing a book. Like, how do you decide? I've been rejected about 12 times already. It's not enough, according to
Oh,
another poet I know.
that's rookie numbers, Paula. So I would say chapbook, 40 pages or less. which I kind of did a dirty dog thing with my chapbook. It was like 39 because I knew I wanted to use those poems to apply for first book award. So if I was
For a what
under,
award, sorry? So is that, can you get a book award for a chapbook?
you can, but it not really. Like you can get accolades for a chapbook, but not the same level as, oh, this is your first book manuscript.
So you're
Like
doing it to get your name out, say I'm
it would be the
published.
difference of
Or-
like $20 versus 1,000, if that like helps a little in the framework. So it's like first book is like what you're really gunning for. You want your first book to be chapbook gets your name out. Yeah, you're totally right. Chapbook gets you like your name out, and like if you're doing a chap with a press you really like, you become friends with all the people in that press because your chap came out with them.
So you
So
publish it with a press.
yeah, yeah. Like I know we got people from all over. So like United States Publishing versus Australian. Like I can't speak to that. Um, but it does have to come through a press.
Right. I'm doing it.
But
I
like
did
a
do
lot
a,
of places, like say like you self-publish a book of poetry. A lot of awards and things like that will not accept a self-published collection. They just
yeah,
don't
I
view
would have,
it
yeah.
as, yeah, because usually that or I'm sorry, usually that manuscript has gone through like editorial review, peer review, university review, all kinds of stuff. So it kind of it yeah, it helps it figure out that it's in the right spot. And dealing with rejection, wake up every morning, get ready to tell no. Like it just poetry is so silly. Like it's just I don't take a no harsh anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's that good, my poetry, but I'm just going to keep going.
Hell yeah.
Maybe, maybe at a
And
later
especially
time. Just
if you have that amount of work, like that's when you can look at like Elizabeth Bishop or Kevin Young or folks who do large amounts of poems as a collection. Like a lot of the people I mentioned on the list are doing 80 pages. They're doing a nice slim volume. I would not even know where to start with a large chunk of poetry. So I think you can look at those folks for guidance on sequencing a large bit.
and are there certain journals that will accept like overseas submissions as opposed to others, or is it just luck of the draw? So I go
I'm
to
sorry.
Submittable, and are there certain journals that accept overseas submissions, or is it luck of the draw? Because I go to Submittable, and there's 3 million different journals all over the US, and I don't know whether it's a tin pot one or a emerging artist one or a
Yeah, I think the main issue is if you're writing in English, like usually like they don't care where you're coming from. Like Rattle, any major US publisher does not see a problem with an Australian writer.
and is there a list
I've
of
noticed more pushback on trying to get published in Australia and New Zealand and getting payment and what the fuck ever and contract and bullshit than I have with my international friends working in the US.
and is there a link or a page I can go to which assesses the different journals? Because I don't want to waste everyone else's time. This is
Oh
my
no,
last
dude,
question.
you're fine. I think you just gotta directly ask the like journal, the managing editor, like, hey, I'm interested in submitting. Should I even bother? You know? Also, do a BCC mass email so that way you can like email all the managing editors of all the magazines you want to work with. So that way you're not just like typing every fucking email.
Great. Thank
Very
you so
clever. That's
much.
BCC or
Juan, would you still like to ask your question?
Thanks, Paula. Nice to meet you. One said cancel in the chat.
Okay.
Um, Yeah, but I don't know. I don't know. I guess I kind of have oh man, I'm blanking out even right now, but imposter syndrome a lot with this, and like I think I came into this kind of just thinking for like my own personal project of writing poetry, of organizing it would be a nice practice, and it sort of but I mean, you've given a lot of I guess reasons to not self-publish in a sense, and so I'm wondering if it's like worth pursuing in spite of myself, I guess. I don't know.
So my main thing against self-publishing is that it's like, what is the need for that book in this world? Like a lot of my favorite self-published shit is from writers who've collected poems from their great grandmothers, or they've collected personal narratives and that they've known this is important to me and I want it to reach the people I know it will impact, versus am I wanting to be marketable? Am I wanting to be in the business of poetry? And that's also where like zine production and like this DIY kind of thing, if I'm making work that I believe so much in that I don't care that it has an ISBN or whatever, then I'm gonna photocopy it and I'm gonna hand it out to my friends at a bar. And I think that's what keeps me from having imposter syndrome, is that I don't care what strangers think of my poetry. If the person I want to read my shit is getting it, then I'm very happy. Um, does that help, Juan? I'm no.
I'm not sure it helps, but it is nice to hear. Like
Well, I mean,
it's
why are you afraid of self-publishing?
I mean, it's not even like I was interested necessarily in self-publishing. It was just kind of like, oh, this would be, like right now I have my poems just like hidden away, but like in a technically public like website, and it's I don't know. I guess I just I don't know where I exist within the space and
Oof,
like
yes.
community and all that. So
Isn't that the question though, of like are you creating the work to exist within that space of outside of you, or is it something? Okay, so like one like sequencing technique I do, I like lay out all my shit, I have it all in order, and then I handwrite the entire manuscript from start to end. And then I have a notebook that is the book from start to finish. That's how I catch all my weird stuff. But it's also like this special little token of my creative work. You know, like self-publishing, my issue with it is that it's like just not cleaned up, it's not edited, there's a lot of falter, there's a lot of image manipulation, there's all kinds of stuff. But it's like, why am I making that? Why am I so in a rush to get that? And like, what am I doing making a paper product of it versus doing an electronic version of my zine, of my poems that I want to share with some people? Because also a magazine is not going to call you out on copyright infringement if you create it and share it personally, like between you and the 15 folks you want to read your poems. But if you publish it on Facebook or whatever, that's when you get issues of copyright bullshit. So yeah, if you have all this work, even if you just want to keep it to yourself, that's totally beautiful. Why are you wanting it out there? Also, another trick, if I'm like super self-conscious, and I did this when I first started writing, I would send poems out under a different name altogether. I had a burner account, and I sent out my most hedonistic bullshit, because it was like, oh, am I wanting my name to the poem, or am I wanting the poem and its action in the world? So maybe think about that, like just create a burner account.
okay, thank you.
Russell, we have or I got a question in the chat about the board behind you, and the Post-its behind you. If that's something that you use for your poetry process or editing process, we'd love to hear about it.
Totally. So my process is I work mostly in Post-it notes, because it allows me to have like a really succinct line and line break. So this board is my Doomsday book. And so I have, let's see if I can do a little bit of the zoom in. I'll have like what I consider like my major themes, which I then like associate with a song. So I have like Mary Clayton, Give Me Shelter, Amy Winehouse. And then I will then pull the poems down as to like what they feel like in the world. It feels very It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia psycho vibe. But it's a way for me to visually connect where I think the poems work. It's also really fun to be like, oh, this line is so important to the book, but it feels so small in the poem. And I don't realize its significance until I see it blown up this fucking big. And I've done that now with all of like I think that's another fun thing of restriction on your own creative work, especially if you feel like you could write forever. My first book, I did only things that would fit on a postcard. With this one, I did only things that would fit on a Post-it note. And the next one, I'm doing an even tinier and then a fold out. And like, how can I like keep text so tight and then explode on the page? And I found that in a fucking alley and just like primed it and then did my Post-it note stuff. Yeah, that's what that is.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. So I'm mindful of time, and if anyone has any last questions, I welcome you to type stack into the chat. Otherwise, I want to say thank you so much to you, Russell. This has been such a treat. Lots of really wonderful information. Thank you for bringing yourself to this presentation. Thank you for sharing all of your wisdom with us. For all of you that have joined us tonight, this again is a presentation brought to you by the Chicago Poetry Center. If you'd like to keep in touch, if you'd like to learn more about the organization, please join our mailing list. All right, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Russell.